We are in primarily Matthew 26, which is going to how am I going to explain that I was weak or self-indulgent or selfish or I just didn't do it. And you got to look them in the eyes. And if you, the lion in that moment has got all of this stuff. In other words, he's promising stuff that he can't deliver. Peter did something very, very similar. Matthew 26, verse 12. He says this, on the first day of the festival of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, because you don't ask that what you don't, your deepest fear comes out. So the first fear that comes out did not even been born. Then Judas said, you'll do it not once, you'll do it not twice, you'll do it 3 times. And Peter turns to Jesus, and they're somewhat indignant, just even in the tone within the passage. If I have to die with you, I will never disown you. And we skip over the next section. And all the other disciples said the same. They were cats of the same cloth, cut from the same cloth. Harumph. If I only had the nerve. Well, of course I've got the nerve. I've got all the hoots. This is like, this is, for lack of there are places where people are experts in politics, education, sports. Everybody can tell you what needs to be done in education. When they try what they think needs to be done, it don't work. Maybe they're not as smart as they think they are. People call in on Monday night all the time telling Brian Kelly what he needs to do and how he needs to do it. Meanwhile, he hasn't never watched it. Did the devil make him do it? And the bottom line is the devil can't make you do anything you don't really want to do anyway. Conversely, Jesus can't make you do what you really don't have in your nature to do. Jesus. My hand. But he often holds his hand close, doesn't he, in my hand. But he often holds his hand close, doesn't he? And in this case, Peter thought he was holding deuces. Low cards. You don't really mean that. Furthermore, I'm indignant. You will not wash me. And he says, well, I'll see you and call you. I'll raise you. Because if you don't do this, then you have no part of me. Now, at this part, Peter could have gone, oh gosh. Oh no. Peter could have gone, oh gosh. Oh no. But now he's magnanimous. Then wash me, just my whole feet. That you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you. No, that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you. No servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. So here's the deal. The guy that was the closest, the guy that was the most important, the guy who says, you now have been struck with, you haven't really at all. You haven't stepped up. You're disappointed. Decidedly different. The opposite. Instead of timid, to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee, it happened this way. Simon, Peter, Thomas, Nathanael, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. I'm going out to fish. And they said, well, we'll come. So they went out and got to the boat, but at night they caught nothing. There's a couple of things here. Professional fishermen, what do you do when everything's lost? You just kind of try to go back to normal. Next Tuesday, we'll try to go back to normal. And we'll just go back to normal. And we'll just do what we always do. We always do. And meanwhile, the boat runs into the dock, right? He had his Lieutenant Dan moment. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire burning coals with fish on it and some bread. Jesus said, "Bring some of the fish you caught." So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153. If you've seen those little boats that they rode in, they weren't very... How many times did he deny? 3. How many questions did he ask? 3. The first question is, do you know that you love me? Now, what was the first thing that he left him with in the denial? I'll never deny you. Do you love me? You know what, Peter, he had to be thinking, oh, Lord, where is this going to set me up? But he's not so bold this time where he goes, absolutely. He says, yeah, you know I do. And the love he used is called phileo. It's a certain kind of love. This here, Peter was hurt, indignant a bit. This here, Peter was hurt, indignant a bit. Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. And he says, well, feed my sheep then. Feed my sheep, feed my sheep, feed my sheep, tend my lambs, feed my sheep. Because I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you were old, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you were old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and lead you where you... And this weird, bizarre kind of a sound. And it sounds like rocks on rocks. And it feels like rocks on knees. And you're just kind of like, oh, wow, the spirit is willing, but the body. And so you look at this time, and it's so sharp. It really is. I got to know time, and it's so sharp. It really is. I got to notice the other way, son of boy. Do you love me? Yeah. Do you love me? Do you love me? Because what he asked him at that point is, he says, at one time you were young and stupid, and you'll be wondering, geez, at some point, well, I'll give an account. And the funny thing is, is that you realize this is a guy that had a direct path to Jesus. He saw him feed 4,000. But that ain't nothing. Up till the end. That includes Peter. That includes the 11 who walked out. That includes the one who betrayed him. That's what I said when Jesus can't force you to do something that's not in your nature. I guess he could. But in the scheme of things, he goes, no, I will love you even though you will betray me to death. And in a sense, that's what sin actually is. I want to go. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death which Peter would glorify God. Well, guess what, folks? We're all going to die. We're all going to some kind of death, and the question is, will it glorify God? Then he said to him, "Follow me." Peter turned and saw that the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. This was the one who leaned back against Jesus at the supper and said, "Which one's going to betray you?" When Peter saw him and said, "What about him?" Jesus said, "Well, if he wants to remain alive until I return, outside of yourself." And eventually, he said, "Die for the flock." Restored. Now, that's not the message that we generally hear about Jesus. Kumbaya, he's my bud, and all this kind of stuff. Jesus was very, very clear. You remember when you were young? Remember that picture? Remember that? Well, somebody's gonna have to dress you. It might even be a little in time while you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. Peter, what do you mean? Let me tell you about trials. These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, of greater worth than gold, which provides even though it's been refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. The kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Though you have not seen him, you love him, and even though you do not see him around, I had other things to do. Feed my ground. I had other things to do. Feed my sheep. My sheep. Do you really love me? Of course I do, but I was embarrassed. I just didn't want to speak up. Protect my flock. Do you love me so much that people just see it spilling out of you? Well, that's a little personal. I'm a little hurt by that. I'm a little embarrassed. Of course I do. Well, then feed my sheep. And do it or not. Because if you get it right, one day, you just might be ready. But to die is 1, 16, 11, 12, 13. I love the Lord because he has heard my appeal for mercy. This is David. Because he has turned his ear to me, I will call out to him as long as I live. Because he has turned his ear to me, I will call out to him as long as I live. The ropes of death, I am your servant, the son of your female servant. You have loosened my bonds. This is what it means to live as Christ, to die as gain. This is ultimately to say, follow me. Because if you follow Christ, the road will most assuredly become rockier. It will become more challenging. You will recall the moment of sincerity at all in you, then Jesus will take you aside. He will sincerity at all in you, then Jesus will take you aside. He will restore you, and he will challenge you, and he will ultimately redeem you. But it is not to a life of Riley. It is often, very, very often, to a life of sacrifice. So when somebody says, of the joy that it brings, Peter says, the inexpressible joy that can be felt when you're truly in tune with